Yeah.
There's two people. Did you have
Mm-hmm. We should start this when the service starts. There's no reason to run around.
Thank you. Yeah, you need to start having some people up that way, please.
Carla.
It's probably not on yet.
Wait, I can't tell. Where is it?
I just know once I start, I'm in there after.
Ladies and gentlemen, would you please, when you're going through the line, limit your comments. It is 10 o'clock already, and we do need to start in a few minutes. You can continue to pass through, pay your respects to the family while the music begins. Cantor Adam Cahan will be playing the guitar. ask everyone to put your cell phones to silent mode at this time. In addition to everyone that's here today, there's 24 devices that are logged in to watch. Actually, there's 33 devices currently logged in. So there's probably another 50, 60 people with us. Service will be conducted by Rabbi Sidney Helbron and Cantor Adam Kagan.
Where will my help come from? Where will my help come from? My help will come from God, maker of heaven and earth. My help will come from God, maker of heaven and earth.
I'd like to invite Warren and Pam and Alan and Paula to rise now for the custom of Kriya. We praise you, Lord. Adonai ma'adam v'tedaehu, ben enosh v'ad chashvehu, Adam lehevel damav, yamav kitzel over, Baboker yatzitz b'chalaf, le'erev yumolel v'yavesh, Hashev enosh ad daka v'tomar shuvu b'nei Adam, Lu chochmu yaskilu zot, Yavinu la'acharitam. Ilova moto yikach hakol. Lo yered acharav kvodo. Shmor tam or eyasham. Yacharit li'ish shalom. Odeh Adonai nefesh avadav. V'lo yishmu kol hachosim bo. Adonai, what are we that you have regard for us? What are we that you are mindful of us? We are like a breath. Our days are like a passing shadow. We come and go like grass, which in the morning shoots up renewed, and in the evening fades and withers. You cause us to turn to dust, saying, "Return, O mortal creatures." Would that we were wise, that we understood whither we are going. For when we die, we carry nothing away. Our glory does not accompany us. Mark the wholehearted, and behold the upright. They shall have peace. Adonai, you redeemed the souls of your servants, and none who trust in you shall be desolate. Death has taken our beloved Morris Spector. Our friends grieve in their darkened world. In their silence there is lamentation. In their tears there is loneliness. Lost in their sorrow, may they find the presence of loving friends. Hear them, O God. Be with them. For Mo's love that united us in life, and which death cannot sever. For his companionship that we shared along life's path, and which continues through the tenderness of memory. For the gifts of his heart and mind that brought us joy and happiness, and is now a precious remembrance. For all these and more, we give our thanks to God. In this time of grief, we listen to the voice of our sacred scriptures that brings us the ever-new message of God's nearness. It tells us of our kinship with the Creator, in light as in darkness, in joy as in sorrow, in life as in death. Adonai ro'i lo echsa, bin odesha yar bitzeni, al me minuchot yinahaleni, nafshi yishovev, yancheni v'magalet tzedek l'ma'an shemo. Gam ki elech begeit sal mavet, lo ira ra, ki ata imadi. Shivtecha umishantecha, hema yenachamuni. Ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged sorai, Yishanta v'shemen roshi, kosi rivaya. Ach tov v'chesed yedefuni kol yemei chayai, Yishavti b'veit Adonai la'orech yamim. I invite you to join with me in the English of the 23rd Psalm, which you can find on the inside of the handout. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures, leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest me with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Sa'inai el heharim, me'ayin yavo Ezri me'im Adonai, Kosei Shamayim va'aretz. I lift my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your protector will not slumber. See, the protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your soul, your going and coming, now and forever. Poet Alvin Fine. Birth is a beginning, and death a destination. But life is a journey, a going, a growing from stage to stage. From childhood to maturity and youth to age. From innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing. From foolishness to discretion, and then perhaps to wisdom. From weakness to strength, or strength to weakness, and often back again. From health to sickness, and back we pray to health again. From offense to forgiveness, loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning, and death a destination. But life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage made stage by stage, birth to death, to life everlasting. In his sorrow, Job cried out, Adonai Natan, la Adonai lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai Mavarach. Job cried, God has given, God has taken away, but blessed be the name of God. In ancient people, we are well acquainted with grief and with the valley of shadows. Death and sorrow are not strangers to us, yet the centuries have taught us that a good name endures beyond the grave, and that there is strength in faith. With Job we say, Adonai Natan, God, you have given. You gave us a loved one who will not be forgotten. For all that was good and enduring in his life, we offer the deepest thanks of our hearts. Adonai lakach, God, you have taken away. We pray for the strength to turn our broken hearts into an altar of trust, before which we acknowledge your sovereignty and love, as we now say, Yehi Shem Adonai Mavarach. Blessed be the name of God, now and forever. Take a moment now for silent remembrance.
למספר הכוכבים לכולם שמות יקרא הרופא ישבו אליהם יכבש לעצמתם למספר הכוכבים לכולם שמות יקרא Healer of the broken-hearted, binder of their wounds, counter of uncountable stars. You know who they are.
The Talmud records that Rabbi Hanan bar Rabbah taught in the name of Rab that on the day our ancestor Abraham departed this earth, the great leaders of the nations of the world gathered together. They formed two lines facing each other and they cried, "Woe to our world whose leader is gone. Woe to the ship whose captain is gone." According to this teaching, it was not only Abraham's children who mourned the passing of their father. It was also the world's greatest leaders who were shaken by his death. It's an interesting teaching. On the one hand, it suggests the depth of the honor and respect and esteem that was accorded to Abraham, that the entire world was bereft at his passing. And yet it's fair to say that Abraham's death was no tragedy. He was 175 years old when he died. Did the world's leaders expect that he would live forever? Instead of grief, they could have gathered in celebration of the life he lived, children he raised, the grandchildren he watched grow into adulthood, who brought forth fourth and fifth generations in his lifetime. They could have celebrated the ideas and values he introduced to the world and the proud legacy he created. They could have rejoiced that just as he lived a good life, Abraham also died well. Why did they suffer from overwhelming grief? Perhaps it's because when a man has played a central role for as long as Abraham, those who shared the world stage with him saw him as more than a role model or an icon. Came to see him as a force of nature. For them, Abraham stood like a timeless monument, so much so that it was hard to comprehend how the world could go on without his presence in it. And so too, for the large and growing family of Mo Spector. His children, Warren and Tina, and Pam and Howard, and Alan and Jill, Alan and Jill, and Paula and Scott, and for Ellen and for Lisa, and for his grandchildren, Sarah, Amy and Michael, David, Jennifer, Scott and his fiancée Hannah, Hillary, Rachel and Dana, and his great-grandchildren Dahlia and Noah. How to comprehend their world without his presence, without his thoughtfulness, kindness, and compassion, without his positive attitude, his ability to take on any task and complete it well. Continue to learn his ability to recognize his own strengths and in his old age, his frailties, his desire to make life easier for those around him, for his gift of patience, for modeling the value of never missing a happy occasion, for the pride he felt in each and every one of you, and the importance he placed on family. Indeed, there was nothing that was more important to him than you, his family. Morris Spector was born 100 years ago in 1923. The youngest of 4 children born to his parents, Max and Lena, who had immigrated from Eastern Europe to Canada in their teens and eventually settled in Chicago, where Max started a successful shirt factory. It was here that Mo and his siblings, Molly, Jack, and Vivian, grew up in a close-knit family which only grew closer during the Great Depression. As a child, Mo was a skinny boy who was afflicted with scurvy, but he filled out and recovered well enough to play football at Sullivan High School, as well as at the U of I in Champaign. If Mo had had his druthers, he would have enlisted in the Air Force and become a pilot at the age of 17. But Max and Lena were not willing to let him enlist early, and the Air Force informed him that he was actually too tall to fly. And so when he was old enough to enlist on his own, he became a radio technician trained in radar as well, and completed his service with a rank of corporal. When Mo returned home, he went to work at the factory with his dad and Uncle Jack, and took on a great deal of responsibility. It was during these years that Jack met Cecile on the beach at Michiana and wooed her with the line, "If you marry me, you'll always have a shirt on your back." Despite that groaner, Mo managed to gain Cecile's hand, and it didn't hurt at all that her mother thought that Mo was the real deal. In May of '48, Mo and Cecile married and moved into a 2-flat that his grandfather owned on Kimball Avenue. As their children arrived, first was Warren and then Pam and Alan. Their apartment went from comfortable to cozy to extremely tight. And then when Paula showed up a whole year later, it was clear that the time had come for them to move. Mo found a nice home on Central Park in Hollywood Park, and this is where he lived for the rest of his life. During those early years, Mo moved on from the factory and took to the road as a schmucky salesman, selling women's sportswear from the late 60s into the mid-70s. Eventually, though, he wanted to be his own boss, and he and Warren went into the hot dog business, buying Big Herms and Skokie, which they ran for nearly a decade. Mo was both a good provider and a great father and husband, who was present in the life of his family. And when Cecile was diagnosed with cancer, he became an extraordinary caregiver. As Paula said, he was a rock who was there for Mom 24 hours a day and was always compassionate and loving. This was nothing new for Mo. For when his kids were sick during those young years, it was always Mo who took care of them. He was a calming, caring presence in any storm 24 hours a day. It was 1984, after 36 years of marriage, when Cecile passed away, marking the end of one chapter of Mo's life. Later, when he met Isla, it marked the beginning of chapter 2, which lasted for 32 years. Mo and Isla were a wonderful match for each other. While Mo might have been more comfortable hanging around the house, Isla got him out and about. Truthfully, she dragged him everywhere with her, making sure that they traveled and enjoyed life. While Mo enjoyed taking trips with Cecile and the kids, he loved to drive. During his years with Isla, many of these trips were taken by motorhome and with grandkids. Regardless of the destination, Mo always seemed to know somebody who lived nearby and never hesitated to pick up the phone and call and reconnect with them. Among Mo's varied interests were photography, which he took seriously enough to build a darkroom in his basement. He developed a talent for making floral arrangements, which would decorate tables for their gourmet club. He had a meticulously maintained basement where he stored every conceivable item you might ever need in your life in its own clearly labeled container. Mo never stopped learning. He was a huge fan of the National Geographic Channel, and he stayed active, continuing to enjoy athletics, bowling into his 90s, and he fulfilled his dream of golfing at both St. Andrews and Pebble Beach. He was more than appreciated by every one of his, Cecile's and Isla's children and their spouses. His grand and even his great-grandchildren were also aware of the boundless love he had for his family. During this last decade, Mo continued to receive blessings amidst some losses. The hardest by far was losing his love, Isla. Blessings? There was his 90th birthday party with a speech that no one will ever forget. Brief but powerful. The honor flight he took with Paula. Getting to know a fourth generation, which is, I'm told, heaven on earth. And the assurance he felt knowing that his children were there for him, as well as his wonderful caregivers, who he built an amazing relationship with: Omo, Lara, Wanda, Toyin, Lorenzo, BJ, and Shlina. And the grace and the acceptance with which he greeted each stage of his journey. Mo, there was no resentment or anger. There was only appreciation and gratitude for the gifts which each and every one of you bestowed upon him. The psalmist taught that a good name is better than precious oil. That a good name is better than anything else we might seek to acquire in this world. For when the moment comes for us to depart this earth, we carry nothing else away. Our glory does not accompany us. Mo Spector was a loving husband and companion, a caring father, a proud grand and great-grandfather, a respected son, brother, uncle, and friend. He was a man who lived well and brought blessings to those whose lives he touched, who gave much more than he ever took, has left a proud legacy that will ever be remembered for good. Zecher Tzadik Livracha. The memory of Morris Spector will ever be a blessing. And let us say, Amen. I'd like to invite Scott and Alan and then Paula to come and share remembrances and a reading with us.
Thank you, Rabbi Cantor. Thank you all for coming. I'm grateful, I'm honored, I'm privileged to be able to say a few words about my father-in-law. Rabbi, I don't think I have much more to say, but I do, though. When you look up in the Yiddish English dictionary the word mensch, Mo's smiling face shows up. Sitting in his chair at 5741 Central Park with his Air Force cap, watching NASA Channel, watching National Geographic Channel, watching football. But only, as I learned, only the Illini, the Bears, and Patrick Mahomes, which I get. One quick story. As of 2 Saturdays ago, and I think Howie Kornthal was there too, we were at the house watching football, watching TCU with Michigan. And at some point, I got up, went into another room, came back, and he changed the channel to something that was definitely not football. And the game was great. It's our Michigan friends in the audience will know there was scoring all over the place. And I came back in and I said, Mo, don't you want to watch football? And he said, no. So apparently he was, sorry Bruce and John, not a Michigan fan. When you go to funerals, you always hear, as the rabbi alluded to, you always hear about family, what a great family person deceased was. And nothing could be truer than in this case with Mo. And I think the best example that I could think of, I'm looking directly at the grandchildren now, his grandchildren spent time with him, not just in his last days, but they got together specifically to be with him. And I cannot think of a more fitting tribute to him than that. I would also like to relate, Mo was very welcoming to other newer members of the family, such as Howie, Tina, Jill, Ellen and Lisa. He made us all feel welcome. He made us all feel like family. The first time that I met Mo, now I'm from the same neighborhood. My mother and Seal were actually in PTA together. My mother's somewhere out here. I did not know Mo. Showed up at the house, having gotten into a fight during a basketball game. And there you were. and had a black eye. And as I recall, I think my mother was in the hospital with appendicitis, but that's a whole other story. And so I showed up at the house. Now, he'd never met me. I had a black eye. And his daughter, Paula, was sleeping at my apartment that I lived with most nights. So not exactly a great entrance. He didn't say a word. Well, he did say what happened, and I told him. He said, oh, okay. He was truly one of the nicest people I've ever met. And I'm not just saying that because he was my father-in-law. He really was. And I just want to say one more thing, and that is that if there were a primer or a blueprint for how to take care of our elders in their last days or their last, then Warren, Tina, Pam and Howie, Jill and Ellen and Lisa, and the grandchildren, this is how it should be. In his last days, the incident that I referenced with the football game was Saturday, New Year's Eve. And after that, it was a fairly quick decline. The grandchildren were there every day and every night. And I'm just overwhelmed by that. And I want to single out, I don't know if any other caregivers are here, but Wanda, thank you so much for all you did. And now my friend of 55 years.
First, I'd like to thank everybody for coming here today. My dad would love seeing everybody be out, probably work in a room, talking to everybody, asking how everybody was and how your family was, meeting all the unfamiliar faces, and I'm happy to see all the familiar old faces too. My dad was known by many throughout his 99 years. He was known by many names. Mo, Poopsie, Popsicle, Morris, Moe, Handyman Mo, Moisha, Margarita Mo. When he had a few too many, it ended up in the ER. Uncle Mo, Papa Mo, and Papa Mo Irving. When a young Amy combined the names of the two oldest guys at the table. He loved his visits from his grandchildren and great-grandchildren. The last 3 years were pretty tough without being able to leave the house, but he never complained. My Sundays with Maury were spent watching 60 Minutes, the NASA channel, eating, and depending on the season, talking about how much the Cubs sucked or how much the Bears sucked. But what I remember most, what I admired most about my dad, years after the raising the four of us during the 60s and 70s, after caring for my mom as her guardian angel in the early 80s, again without complaining, he was his own man. Many Saturdays when we were younger, he would take us out for lunch at Lerner's for hot dogs and fries. As we were standing waiting for our food, I would watch him watching the guys working, and always wanted one day to own his own place. And ended up doing exactly that with Big Herms in the late 70s and early 80s. Another example was during our many summer car trips he took us on all over the country. North, south, east, and west. In his words, because that's the only way to see the country. So he did what he wanted again. He always talked about RVing when we were on those trips, and he did what he wanted, and eventually bought one, and continued traveling with Isla for many more years after that. He left his house on Central Park for over 60 years and fulfilled another dream after his death. Throughout the years, he always said he was leaving the house feet first. And unfortunately for us, but happily for him, he got his wish on Monday. We're happy he's reunited with my mom and Isla, and his mom and dad, and Molly and Babe, Jack and Mildred, Vivian and Milt, and Barbara and Marvin. We all love you and miss you, Dad. You lived a great life.
I didn't mention Paula, and no one has done any more. It's fine. So.
It's okay, Scott. See you at home. Poopsie's with me. I read this poem and it reminded me really of how Poopsie lived his life always, how he loved after his losses, and mostly how I think that he would be saying this to us now. If you wish to love me still when I leave, you can, by loving others, by giving new love, by not losing hope, by still seeing joy, by living your life like a Christ to be lived, by letting go when the natural order demands it, by being at peace with the circle of time. If you wish to love me still when I leave, you can, by loving life, by loving all that is life, by loving yourself most of all, the way I loved you. For now that I cannot, you must love yourself, and you will still love me. Love your life, and you will love me still. Oh, that was wrong, sorry. Thank you. Sometimes people wonder, was the rabbi exaggerating when he spoke? And you hear for yourselves and you knew for yourselves, so that every word was true. Into your care, O God, we entrust the spirit of Morris Spector. For you keep faith with your children in death as in life. Sustain us that we may meet with serenity the mysteries that lie ahead, knowing that when we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you, God, are with us, a loving friend in whom we put our trust. You are the light of our life, our hope in eternity. We'll rise now for our memorial prayer. Grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Morris Spector, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence. Let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace. Let us say, be seated now for a moment.
The interment will take place at Memorial Park Cemetery in Skokie. If you're planning on going to the cemetery, we're going to be forming the funeral procession on Big Tree Lane facing east. Drive with your high beam headlights on and your flashers, and we will also put flags on top of your cars for you. After the interment, the family will be at the residence of Pamela and Howard Corinthal, 2419 Happy Hollow Road in Glenview. They'll be following the service until 5 this evening and then resuming from 7 to 9. That information is in the service folders that we've handed out. The following have been asked to act as pallbearers: Howard Corinthal, Scott Clare, Sarah Corinthal, David Corinthal, Jennifer Clare, Hillary Spector, Rachel Spector, and honorary pallbearer Dana Clare. At this time, if everybody would please rise as the casket's escorted from the sanctuary. Pallbearers, please come forward.
Underneath the flag is a handle. Grab the handle. Look straight up. Walk forward, please. Place the casket on the first to roll it. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This is the best to have the cemetery. Stop.